Hi beautiful, welcome to my channel. In today's video we are going to be talking about what palettes I would keep if I could only keep 10 palettes from my whole makeup collection. This video has been done by many creators and it is such a fun video to make. As far as if there was one specific creator who came up with this tag type of video, I'm not sure who it was, but if you do know, let me know down below and I will go ahead and link his or her channel in the description box of the video. This is kind of my second time doing this video. Just last year I did this video but with 5 palettes instead, if I could only keep 5 palettes, and let me tell you that one was a lot harder to pick my palettes for than this video is. I'm going to actually link it down below in case you guys are interested, and yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Basically, let's say that like my house caught on fire but I could like quickly run to this room and like save a handful of palettes, 10 for instance. Which ones would I save? That's kind of what this video is about. Now I do have 2 answers for that question, the first one of them being extremely simple. The second one is the one that I'm going to actually expand on, and that is the strategic version of this, right? So the short answer is I would grab my 9 Mothership palettes, grab a 10th palette, maybe another one from Pat, one of the quads or something, and I would just run out of here with those. And the reason is that Pat McGrath palettes are pretty expensive, so they're going to be the hardest ones to replace, and I've spent a lot of money building my Pat McGrath Mothership collection. You guys know I'm obsessed with it, so I would definitely think of saving those first. I would just like grab them all and like run for it. But the strategic version of this video, which is what the video is about, is kind of having a palette collection where I have my favorites in every category. I have warms, I have colors, I have fall, I have pinky nudes, I have winter colors, shimmers, just like a collection of palettes where I have everything that I want to have to not need any other eyeshadow ever again anymore. Right? So I did grab all 10 palettes that are extremely exciting for me, that I love using and picking up, but I also made sure that those palettes were not all the same shades and that I have some variety within the 10 palettes that I'm keeping. Okay, let's get started. I'm not going in any particular order. These are just the 10 palettes that I feel like would be essential for me to have if I were to only keep 10 palettes in my collection. The first palette I want to talk about is the Patrick Ta palettes, and this palette would be an absolute essential for me to keep because this palette has all of my favorite shades of neutral to warm colors. It has a really nice amount of matte shades, it has some really sparkly glimmery shades, and it even has a couple of cream shades up there that I can use as a base to change out the look in this palette. This right here would be kind of my essential neutral to warm everyday go-to neutral colors palette, but it still has some of the sparkly glitteriness that I love with these pops of shade up here. I think this palette is wonderfully formulated, and the curation of shades that this palette has makes it so that you can truly use it for any occasion ever. I think you can find an appropriate look within this palette for absolutely any occasion that you might need it for, you know? So this right here is definitely the first one that I would reach for. I'm going to use my thumbnail from my review video on the screen so that you can see the types of looks that you can create with this one, and I'm going to also link every video I've made with the palettes I'm talking about down in the description box of this video in case anybody is interested in watching them. Besides neutral shades, a different color story that I am extremely interested in always having in my collection, because I think it brings my eyes out like crazy and it is actually one of my favorite color stories to wear, is actually a burgundy palette, and I could think of no other burgundy palette than this little thing right here, my Pat McGrath Voyeuristic Vixen quad. If you watch my review video on this one, you know there is a lot of feelings and emotions attached to this palette, and I am still as obsessed with it as I was when I first got it and I first reviewed it. I grab it every chance I get. Every time I use it, I really love the eye look that I come up with. It is an extremely easy palette to use. It only has the one matte burgundy shade, but it is extremely versatile because you can get that matte shade to blend out into like a transition color or to look as intense as it does in the pan. Besides that, it's got this beautiful duochrome shimmer right here, which you can totally see on the mirror how it looks really yellowy gold, and then in the pan it looks more like a rose gold type of a shade. So it's got a crazy shift to it. It makes your eyes sparkle like no other. I absolutely love that shade, and I'm also really into the bronzy shade and the highlighty looking shade that you get in this palette that complements every single other shade so well. I think I could totally say that this is my favorite 4-pan eyeshadow palette in my collection, and the only quad that I would take with me if I could only keep 10 palettes. Now, when I said at the beginning of the video that I would just take my mothership palettes in one quad, I was totally referring to this one, but I didn't want to give it away as fast, I guess. I'm sure that a lot of you guys knew. So I would just take my 10 mothership palettes in this one and like just run for it. I'm very thankful that this is all hypothetical and that it's not actually, hopefully knock on wood, going to happen, right? So that would be the second palette that I would 100% have to take with me if that were to happen. Let's go for the third palette that I would just have to have no matter what, and that is this right here from Miss Natasha Denona. This is my #1 Natasha Denona eyeshadow palette. It is my favorite. I die for the glitters and the shimmers in this palette right here, and I don't have any other palette from Natasha that has that kind of formula in them. She has duochrome shimmers and like good enough shimmers in her other palettes that I actually do really like as well, but nothing that has this type of beautiful glimmery toppery type of sparkle like the gold palette does. I am a sucker for sparkly glowy eyelids, and so this palette would definitely have to come with me in my collection. I also really like that this one has neutral to cool tone shades versus my Patrick Ta palette that has neutral to warm shades. So I have both options now in my 10 palette collection. Plus this one also has really beautiful sparkles and a couple of teal shades that I absolutely love as a pop of color. Now this palette from Natasha Denona is actually being discontinued. It is in stock at Sephora at the moment that I'm filming this video, and apparently after it sells out it is going to be a goner forever. Natasha said it somewhere on Instagram. You guys have been telling me about it. I've been hearing about it everywhere. After they sell out of the gold palette, it is not coming back. This is the only Natasha Denona $129 palette that I absolutely swear by. I think it's worth every single penny and I highly recommend it. So if you've been thinking about it, definitely go for it because it is just 100% worth it. Of course, the links to all of these palettes are going to be down below in the description box. So if you're interested in any of these palettes, definitely check out the description box below. Let's talk about another palette from Pat McGrath that would be an absolute must-have for me. And that is this Mothership palette right here. I just grabbed it from back there because you guys are sneaky, and whenever I take them out of back there, you know I'm going to be talking about them. So I waited. So this right here is actually Mothership #1, the first Mothership she ever released. And this is a remarkable palette, is the only thing I can say about it. I live for this one. First of all, it has the best cool tone mattes. So now I have neutral to warm mattes, I have mainly neutral mattes and cool tone mattes. I am good on the different undertones of neutral matte shades in my collection, and I don't think the rest of the palettes I'm going to talk about have any more neutral shades, so I feel like this kind of completes it. Kind of, I have a couple of exceptions, but for the most part these are all of my neutral mattes that I'm keeping for my 10 palette collection. Now besides the exceptional neutral cool tone mattes this palette has, it actually has the extreme black shade right here. And of course, every well-rounded palette collection has to have a matte black eyeshadow because you need to use that one to smoke out or intensify any other shade in your palette collection. Pat's matte black shade is one of my absolute favorite ones. It is not just extremely intense, but it also blends out with a lot of ease, and I absolutely love it. Now, what I think is the most remarkable thing about this palette is definitely the Astro Blitz shades in it. This right here is what they swatch like. The gold one is pretty cute, but the three that I'm most interested in are definitely these up here. First of all, the middle finger right there, it is a beautiful duochrome pink to blue shift shade that is absolutely incredible. This blue eyeshadow here, I never knew how much I liked blue eyeshadow before I tried that one, especially in combination with the other two. And this right here is just the perfect inner corner shade or lid toppery shade for any cool tone look, any blue look. It just looks absolutely delicious. Just take a look at how much these would make your eyes shine. Absolutely crazy. This Mothership palette has definitely become one of my all-time favorite Mothership palettes, and I feel like it doesn't really look that remarkable when you see it on the website, and it's also like the first one, so it's like old or whatever, but it's actually one of the best for sure, and I highly recommend it. I totally forgot to continue to talk about the different videos I've done with this palette, but definitely check out the 5 Looks 1 palette I made with this one. I think it's one of my all-time favorite 5 Looks 1 palette videos I've ever made because the looks are just so different and so glamorous and so unique. The next palette I would 100% definitely be keeping. I'm not going to talk about too much because this one is like a little bit of a sore subject to those of you who didn't get it when it released because it is now forever gone, and that is the Kaleidos and Angelica Nyqvist palette. This palette has just such a unique color story. I think I would definitely have to have it in a 10 palette collection, and I'll tell you what the most important shades would be for me in this one. Honestly, quite a lot of them are very special, but let me narrow it down a little bit. These matte shades right here are extremely unique. They blend out like an absolute dream. I love Kaleidos mattes and the shimmer formulas. They have amazing formulas, and I feel like these matte shades, as buttery and as pigmented as they are in this palette, are extremely hard to find. I don't have any other palette in my collection that has any shades even close to this one, so for these four, this palette would definitely be an absolute must-have for me. Besides the matte shades, this palette also has spectacular shimmers like these right over here. You can see how extremely shiny they are, very pigmented. They all have some sort of duochrome to them, and they shine on your eye like crazy. So combining these with the matte shadows I just showed you is incredible. Plus it also has some really nice transition shades for the looks that you can create with this palette. I am extremely sad that they haven't re-released this palette because I feel like a lot of people definitely missed out on it, and it is an incredible palette to have in your collection. Therefore, if I could only keep 10, that would be one of them for sure. Let's talk about another collaboration palette that is still available, but it's also limited edition and that I would have to have if I were to only keep 10, and that is this one right here. This is the Giant Wolves palette from Annette and Odin's Eye, and I feel like I have a very similar feeling with this one as I do with the Kaleidos one, and it's because the shades are extremely unique. While the Kaleidos one has a little bit more shades and it has really good transition shades that you can use with your other shadows, I feel like this one, for me and the way that I like to do my eyeshadow, it has the best matte and shimmer shades, but I do need to reach into another palette to grab transition shades that I like for this one. In the Patrick Ta palette, the Mothership #1, and the gold palette from Natasha Denona, I have plenty of transition colors that I can use with this one, and so of course this palette would definitely complement my collection extremely nicely. I'm obsessed with the shades that Annette chose for this one. I swatched in the middle of my fingers too so that I can show you all the mattes together. Just check out these beautiful mattes. These are very, very unique, just like the ones in the Kaleidos palette, and also mattes that I don't think are readily available in any of my other palettes, particularly these right here, because this is just a matte black, but like these intense purple, blue types of shades, this intense green right here, those are kind of hard to come across, and she did a beautiful job putting them in this giant Woofs palette, and I love those shades so much. I think they just make the most beautiful dark smoky eyes. And then besides those mattes, we definitely have to talk about the shimmers that come in this palette. Again, all of them have some sort of duochrome. This one here is actually a multi-chrome shade, so there's like 3 to 4 different colors in there, and they just have the best freaking sparkle. A few of you have commented whenever I use this palette or I do looks with it that it looks like I'm wearing a Pat McGrath eyeshadows, and honestly the shimmers and duochromes are very close to like Pat McGrath's regular formula. Not the Astro Blitz formula, but her regular formula with the beautiful intense duochrome shades and all of that. I do think that these shimmers totally compare to those, so highly recommended. It is still available, and it is also a limited edition palette, so definitely go for this one if you've been thinking about it. 6 palettes in and 4 to go. And another color story that I would definitely have in a palette collection if I were to only be keeping 10 palettes would be purples. And so of course I saw no better palette to keep for purples than this one right here from the ABH Norvina line. This right here is a purple lover's dream, and it also has some fire burgundy shades, which I absolutely love. I did a 5 looks 1 palette with this one, and I loved every single look that I created. It also has some really nice transition colors and some really beautiful mid-tone mauve shades, plus some spectacular shimmers in it. Here's a 5 looks 1 palette I did with this one, and I just absolutely loved every single look that I created. I love the different textures and the different finishes of the shades in this one, and it is a huge ass palette, so it brings my 10 palette collection a lot more variety and a lot more to pick from. So for a purple palette, I would definitely be keeping this one. By the way, if you've ever tried one of these Norvina palettes, like one of the first 3 I would say, and you don't like the formula of them, so you've skipped on this one for that, the formula in this one, it's much better and much different from the formula from the first 3 Norvina palettes, so give it a chance because 100% worth it. I did not personally like volumes 1 through 3. I started liking them in volume 4, and I love volume 5, so much so that I would keep it in my 10 palette collection. Now you might have realized that while we have neutral, cool tone, and warm nudes in my collection already, we don't have pinky nudes yet. And we definitely need some pinky nudes in the collection. And for the pinky nudes, I chose the Pillow Talk palette. This palette has 4 different Charlotte Tilbury looks. It has some brighter pinks right here that I would be definitely interested in having. And it has the pinky nudes on this section of the palette here. Besides that, it's got some really beautiful transition shades in the center, and the shimmers in this palette are not glittery, which is a good thing because sometimes we want our eyeshadows to be just shiny but not have a lot of glitter thrown in there. I feel like in a lot of the palettes I've already kept, there is a lot of glitter, and so this palette has more of the toned down, more work appropriate shimmers. And so for that reason, this would also have to be a palette that I would keep if I were to only be keeping 10 palettes in my collection. Palette number 9 is my favorite Huda Beauty eyeshadow palette, so you already know what's coming if you watched my channel before. You know that I'm obsessed with Mercury Retrograde. In my opinion, the best Huda Beauty palette ever, and this palette has some like berry shades, but it also has really nice pastels, and it's got a really good amount of like transition colors that I can combine with not only the shades in this one, but so many of the shades in my palettes that I'm keeping in my collection. Besides that, I love this palette for the beautiful jewel tone shimmers that the palette has. Here's just 5 of those beautiful stunning shimmers. Every single one of them has a beautiful shift to it, and these are all on the sparkly shimmery side for sure. Now what is good about this palette is that all of these glide so easily on your eye, even though they're super glimmery shimmery. They kind of go on like a cream, so they don't have a ton of fallout. I absolutely love this formula from Huda, and this palette is one of my favorite go-to Huda palettes. The 5 Looks 1 palette with this one is one of the most watched videos on my channel, and I totally get it, because I feel like at first you might not know exactly how to go about combining the shades that this palette brings, but after you see the colors on the eye and you do the types of looks that I did in that 5 Looks 1 palette video, you'll totally be head over heels in love with the Mercury Retrograde palette from Huda. She's released 18 pan palettes since this one, but this one has definitely yet to be topped. We'll see what palette she comes up with this year for the holiday season, but this palette is definitely still #1 for me. But long story short, I think the beautiful pastel colors that the Mercury Retrograde palette has would definitely be an asset to my 10 palette collection. Last but not least, palette number 10 is also a Mothership palette. I am keeping 2 of my Mothership palettes in my 10 palette collection, and the palette is Mothership number 9, which is the newest Mothership palette to come out, so I'm still super like hyped about it. And this one has, I think, the most special Astro Blitz shades, which is the reason mainly why I'm keeping it. Astro Blitz shades have always been special since Mothership number 1, which I showed you earlier, but none of the Astro Blitz shades shine like these two shine right here. And so for that reason, this palette is a must-have for me, because I need to have the option of having the glowiest, most shimmery eyes ever, and this palette provides it. Besides that, I absolutely love the gold, the multi-chrome shade, and the mattes that this palette has. It has 3 beautiful mattes. This one here is a stunning transition shade that you can use with so many of your looks. And then it has a really pretty intense peachy shade that you can combine with so many of your looks. I don't think I have any other shade like that one in my collection, and is a really lovely one. And then the darkest color from this palette is not quite a burgundy. It's like the perfect mix between a burgundy and a brown, and it just gives the best depth to your eye. Like I said, not the darkest, but we do have a couple of blacks in our collection that we can use to make it even darker if we wanted to. I definitely also had a lot of fun creating a 5 Looks 1 palette for Mothership number 9, and like I mentioned to you before, I'm obsessed with the Astro Blitz shades that come in this one, because I think they are the shiniest, more glittery, attention grabbing ones ever. And so for that reason, Mothership number 9 Utopian Dream palette would definitely have to be a part of my 10 palette collection. I am dying to know what you guys think of my picks. Which palettes are you so surprised that didn't make it into my top 10 collection? And to be completely honest with you, while it was kind of easy-ish to pick these shades, I feel like if I maybe were to pick them tomorrow or the day after, the 10 palettes that I would be keeping would totally change based on my mood. I'm very happy with the selection that I made though. So if you're new to makeup or you're starting to build your palette collection, maybe this helped you kind of pick the palettes that are like the most unique, the best of the best, the ones that I would keep in my collection to start building yours. Anyways, like I said before, definitely check out the links down below if you're interested in buying any of these. And I love you guys so much. Thank you for being here. Comment down below which palette are you so surprised that I didn't keep in my collection at all. I'll tell you my answer right now though. I'm very surprised I didn't keep more Natasha Denona palettes, and I'm also very surprised that I don't have any Anastasia palettes at all. That would be my answer, but now you tell me which one do you think I'm definitely missing. So yeah, that's it for this video. If you want to know what I'm wearing, that'll also be linked down below. I love you guys so much. Thank you for being here, and I hope to see you back in the next video. Bye!